The game doesn't begin until you see the board someone is watching you right now. Not physically, not through your camera, through your behavior. They already know something about you that you may not realize you're revealing. The way you answer questions, the way you react when someone ignores you, the things you defend too quickly, the things you never talk about, and the strangest part, you may have been teaching people how to influence you without even knowing it. Think about the last person who made you feel unusually comfortable. Why did you trust them? Was it because they were genuinely trustworthy? Or because they knew exactly what to say? Think about the person who always seems to agree with you. Maybe they're loyal, or maybe they've simply learned that agreement keeps you talking. And think about someone who suddenly disappeared from your life. You probably called it betrayal, bad luck, a change in circumstances. But what if their decision had been made long before you noticed the distance? What if the final conversation wasn't the beginning of their exit, but the moment you finally discovered it? This is where Machiavelli becomes uncomfortable, because Machiavelli wasn't obsessed with what people claimed they were doing. He was interested in what their actions revealed. He understood something most people forget. Power rarely enters a room wearing a crown. Sometimes it arrives as kindness, sometimes as a compliment, sometimes as patience, sometimes as silence, and sometimes as someone simply waiting for you to underestimate them. The dangerous person isn't always the one threatening you. Sometimes it's the person you never thought you needed to watch. And once you understand this, ordinary conversations start looking different. A compliment isn't always just a compliment. A favor isn't always just a favor. Silence isn't always empty. And someone's sudden generosity may have less to do with generosity and more to do with timing. Machiavelli understood one fundamental principle: never judge a move only by what it looks like. Judge it by what it produces. Imagine someone gives you a small opportunity. You think they're helping you, but ask yourself, why this opportunity? Why now? What do they gain if you accept? And what happens if you say no? Those questions can completely change the way you see the situation. Because power doesn't always come from forcing someone. Sometimes power comes from creating a situation where they willingly choose the outcome you wanted. And that is much harder to detect. So the first principle is simple: stop announcing your intentions. Most people reveal their plans before they've even begun. They tell their friends. They tell their coworkers. They post online. They explain what they're building. They announce where they're going. And then they wonder why resistance suddenly appears. But every person who hears your plan becomes another variable. One person doubts you. Another copies you. Another discourages you. Another becomes jealous. And another tells someone else. Something that once existed quietly inside your mind suddenly becomes public information. There is another way. Move first. Explain later. You don't need to announce every construction project before the building exists. Let people see the result. This doesn't mean hiding everything from everyone. It means understanding the difference between communication and exposure. Your unfinished plans are vulnerable. Your completed results are not. And here's something most people don't understand. When you stop explaining yourself, people begin filling the silence with their own assumptions. Let them. Some will think you're doing nothing. Some will underestimate you. Some will assume you've changed direction. And while they're trying to figure you out, you have time to build. That leads to the second principle. Being underestimated can be an advantage. We're taught from childhood to prove ourselves. Show people you're intelligent. Show them you're successful. Show them you're capable. Show them what you've achieved. But ask yourself, why? If everyone knows exactly how capable you are, they can prepare for you. If nobody notices, you have room. The quiet person in the room may be collecting information while everyone else competes for attention. The person who doesn't need to speak first can hear what everyone else reveals. And the person who doesn't need applause can work longer. The person who isn't desperate to appear powerful often has more freedom than the person constantly performing power. This becomes even more important when it comes to money. Don't build wealth simply to convince people that you're wealthy. Build wealth so you have options. There is a massive difference. One person spends everything to look successful. Another person looks completely ordinary while quietly building savings, skills, assets, and leverage. One is displaying wealth. The other is building power. And history repeatedly shows which one tends to last longer. Now here's where strategic thinking becomes even more useful. People reveal themselves through patterns. So stop listening only to what people say. Study what changes. If someone's attitude changes when money enters the conversation, notice it. If their friendliness disappears when you stop providing value, notice it. If they suddenly become interested when you're successful, notice the timing. If they disappear when you need something, remember it, but don't immediately accuse them. Don't create unnecessary drama. Just update your understanding. Because one incident can be misunderstood. A pattern usually can't. And this is one of the most important lessons of strategic thinking. You don't need to confront every strange behavior. Sometimes the smartest response is simply to change their access to you. Give less information. Reduce dependence. Adjust expectations. And keep moving. Because not every enemy needs to be defeated. Some only need to lose access to you. That is a completely different kind of power. Now consider something even more uncomfortable. Why do some people always seem to know exactly what to say to you? Maybe they've learned your emotional triggers. They know what makes you defensive. They know what makes you feel important. They know what kind of praise makes you lower your guard. And they know which criticism makes you desperate to prove yourself. If someone understands your emotional buttons, they don't need physical control. They can influence your decisions simply by pressing the right one. That's why self-awareness is strategic armor. Know what makes you angry. Know what makes you desperate. Know what makes you seek approval. Know what makes you afraid of losing someone. Because whatever you cannot control inside yourself can potentially be used to control you from outside. You don't need a throne to have weaknesses. You only need something you're afraid to lose. Your job, your reputation, your money, your status, your relationship, your identity. And the more desperate you become to protect it, the more leverage someone else may gain over you. So build something nobody can easily take away. Your judgment, your skills, your discipline, your ability to walk away, your ability to survive without immediate approval. Those are forms of wealth too. And now we reach one of the strangest principles of all. Silence makes people reveal more. Ask a question. Then stop. Don't rescue the conversation. Don't immediately explain yourself. Don't rush to make the other person comfortable. Let the silence exist. People often speak again because silence feels unfinished. And that second answer can contain information the first one didn't. This isn't about interrogating people. It's about being comfortable enough not to fill every empty space. Experienced negotiators understand this. They don't rush. They understand that the first offer isn't always the real position. The first answer isn't always the complete answer. And the first explanation isn't always the real reason. Patience creates information, and information creates leverage. But silence works on yourself too. Sometimes you need to become quiet long enough to discover what you actually want, not what your friends want, not what social media tells you to want, not what makes you look successful. What do you actually want? Because if you don't define your objective, other people will happily define it for you. They will sell you lifestyles, status, luxury, fear, urgency, and you can spend years climbing a ladder that was leaning against the wrong wall. So ask yourself, what am I actually trying to buy with money? Freedom, security, time, respect, recognition, or simply the feeling that you're finally enough? That answer changes everything. Because money without strategy can become another form of control. The more you earn, the more you can spend. The more you spend, the more you need to earn. And suddenly you're working to maintain the lifestyle that requires you to keep working. That's not freedom. That's a sophisticated prison. Real wealth should expand your choices. It should give you the ability to say no. No to bad deals. No to toxic environments. No to unnecessary pressure. No to opportunities that cost more than they're worth, and especially, no to people who only value you when you're useful. This is why the strategic person protects optionality. Never let one source of income completely define your existence if you can reasonably diversify. Never allow one skill to become your only skill. Never allow one person's approval to become the foundation of your identity. Dependency creates leverage. Options reduce it. And now consider another lesson Machiavelli would recognize immediately. Don't fight every battle. Some people are addicted to winning. They need the final word. They need everyone to know they were right. They correct every mistake. They challenge every disagreement, but if you fight over everything, people eventually learn that provoking you is easy. You become predictable. Instead, become selective. Give away the small victory. Let someone have the last word. Let them believe they won the argument. If the issue doesn't affect your long-term position, why spend valuable energy defending it? The strongest negotiators don't necessarily win every point. They secure the point that matters. And you should know the same thing about your life. What is non-negotiable? Your time, your freedom, your financial independence, your family, your future. Protect those. Everything else deserves examination. Because if you treat everything as equally important, nothing actually is. And perhaps one of the most dangerous mistakes is confusing movement with progress. You can be busy every single day and still be moving nowhere. You can answer hundreds of messages, attend meetings, work late, watch educational videos, research endlessly, and still avoid the one decision that could actually change your position. That's why action matters, but not reckless action. Strategic action, action that changes your position, action that creates leverage, action that increases your options, action that moves you from dependence toward independence. And sometimes that means doing something extremely uncomfortable. Leaving the opportunity that no longer makes sense. Leaving the business model that has stopped working. Leaving the identity that was built for an older version of you. Leaving the environment that rewards the person you no longer want to become. Most people don't leave because they confuse persistence with loyalty. But there is a difference between commitment and attachment. Commitment serves the future. Attachment protects the past. So ask yourself one brutal question. If I had not already invested time, money, and emotion into this, would I choose it today? If the answer is no, you may already know what needs to happen. And this is where the Machiavellian mindset becomes less about controlling other people and more about controlling yourself. Because the hardest opponent isn't always another person. Sometimes it's your own attachment, your ego, your fear, your need for approval, your desire to be understood, your inability to walk away. Your obsession with proving someone wrong. Those weaknesses can cost more than any external enemy, so become difficult to manipulate by becoming disciplined emotionally. When someone provokes you, pause. When someone flatters you, observe. When someone pressures you, slow down. When someone offers something that seems too perfect, study the incentive. And when someone tries to rush your decision, ask yourself why they need you to decide quickly. Urgency is one of the oldest tools of influence. If you don't decide now, you'll lose it. Maybe. But sometimes the person creating the urgency is more afraid of your patience than you are of missing the opportunity. Remember that. The person who can wait often has an advantage over the person who desperately needs an answer. Patience isn't inactivity. Patience is maintaining your position until the conditions favor action. That is strategic patience. And once you understand it, you stop chasing every opportunity. You start asking whether the opportunity deserves you. That's the transformation. You stop asking, how can I get people to respect me? And start asking, am I building something worthy of respect? You stop asking, how can I look successful? And start asking, does my success give me more freedom? You stop asking, how can I win this argument? And start asking, does winning this argument improve my position? You stop asking, why did they betray me? And start asking, what did their behavior teach me? That final question is powerful, because every betrayal contains information. Every failed negotiation contains information. Every bad investment contains information. Every missed opportunity contains information. The mistake is allowing pain to become the only lesson. Extract the information. Update your strategy. Move forward. You don't need to become paranoid. You need to become observant. You don't need to manipulate everyone. You need to understand incentives. You don't need to hide from the world. You need to control what you reveal. And you don't need to dominate every person you meet. You need to become sovereign over your own decisions, because once you can control your attention, your emotions, your spending, your reactions, and your time, you become much harder to control. And that is the real lesson. Not cruelty, not deception, clarity, the ability to see the move beneath the move, the incentive beneath the words, the cost beneath the opportunity, the weakness beneath the confidence, and the exit beneath the conversation. So from this moment forward, watch differently. When someone gives you praise, listen to what comes next. When someone asks for something, examine the exchange. When someone becomes unusually interested in your success, observe the timing. When someone suddenly becomes distant, don't chase immediately. When someone pressures you to decide quickly, slow down. When you enter a room, observe before speaking. When you have something valuable to build, protect it before displaying it. And when you finally gain leverage, don't waste it proving that you have it. Use it to buy freedom. Because the most powerful person in the room isn't necessarily the loudest. Sometimes it's the person who knows exactly what matters and has no need to prove it. If this way of thinking is changing how you see people, money, and power, stay close to Machiavellian Mind. Subscribe if you want to go deeper into the psychology of wealth, strategy, influence, and the historical lessons most people never study. Because the more you understand the machinery underneath human behavior, the harder it becomes for anyone to operate that machinery against you. And remember this, the game doesn't begin when someone makes a move. It begins when someone starts studying the board. The question is, are you finally looking at the board?